Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to talk a little bit about my 2013 Chevy Camaro. Over this spring and summer, I did a bunch of different modifications, or really I should say maintenance items to it. And I want to talk a little bit about those and kind of share with you my experiences, if it was all worth it, that kind of thing. So in springtime, I had to do a master cylinder in the car. Unfortunately, it failed during a track day. So I did that, clutch master cylinder. So I did that. I actually did axles last year in it. The axles started to vibrate a little bit, which was unfortunate, but it does have aftermarket axles in it. They've been okay so far. But then this year, I kind of did the bulk of the work. So this car's got 105,000 miles on it now. I had never done struts. Well, let me tell you what, I didn't even realize quite how bad they were getting. I knew they weren't great, but I think for the last year or two, they were really getting worn out. But they've gotten especially worn out in the last 3 or 4 months before I did them. And so so this is a 1LE car, right? And you really can't seem to find a lot of stock replacement struts that are to the 1LE's level, right? Because they are a different strut than a 2SS or a SS Camaro would have. So I did some research, I looked on some forums, I did some internal soul searching on my own, and I bounced back and forth between potentially going coilovers, which would have been, $3,000 to $4,000 for a good set of coilovers. Then it lowers the car, and I purposely did not want to lower the car. I know that's contrary to what most people want to do. And then I looked into various other brands of struts, and a lot of companies, bigger name companies, the KYBs of the world, stuff like that, they don't actually make parts for these cars as much as you think. And some of the companies that do, they're sold out, seemingly indefinitely, which is strange because these are fairly popular cars. Obviously, they sold a bunch of them. I don't know. So finally, the Bilstein B6 shocks, did some research on. Obviously, Bilstein's a reputable brand. I've always thrown Bilsteins on trucks and stuff just as a default. They're good shocks, never put much thought into it. So I did a bunch of research, and according to the internet, people were saying that the big claim to fame of these Bilsteins is that they give you improved performance over an SS car's suspension, okay? Now, that of course begs the question, if the Bilsteins are better than an SS car, per their own admission, which is always, could also be advertising claim, right? Are they then also better than a 1LE? Because a 1LE is better than a regular SS. And then, let's back up for a second. How do you define better, right? Well, in this case, I would say more advanced compression and rebound, stiffer compression and rebound in an effort to absorb bumps in a sportier fashion. That's how we're going to define better. Not smoother, not more comfortable, right? Because that could be another metric. You could measure something. Okay, whatever, fine. So presumably these things are more sporty. They are the Performance Series Bilsteins. Mind you, Bilstein only makes one series of shocks for these cars. So then I went on some forums and just some Googling. And multiple people, for what it's worth, had said on the forums that the Bilsteins are a notable improvement over a stock 1LE's struts, and that the stock 1LE struts, if you rapidly hit bumps in succession, their performance would degrade when you hit those secondary bumps, just because of the way the valving was. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. I don't know if I noticed that or not, but noted. Did more research. Finally, I said, okay, I gotta buy the Bilsteins. They're $900, basically $1,000 with tax, and I bought some miscellaneous rubber parts that go along with them and whatnot. I use my stock springs. Springs should last 200,000 miles plus easily in a car like this where they're not getting rusty. So could have bought new springs, whatever, doesn't matter. Anyway, so I bought the struts, installed them. I have a video on that. I'll link it up here. Got the struts in, and I then took it and I got it aligned. Okay, now I want to make this very, very clear. The alignment specs, I have them do a specific spec, but when they first aligned it, they put 0 camber in the front and 1.2 degrees in the rear, which was not what I wanted, but that's what we had. So that's gonna become important in a minute. So now I've got alignment, okay? I've got the new struts. I put a new set of front tires on the car, right around the same time, and I had done rears about 1,500 miles before that. So this car is dialed, right? I've got tires, struts, everything. And I then said, okay, I want to take this thing on a drive, obviously. And first things first, I took it on a road local to me, like uphill mountain curvy road that I have driven on a bazillion times. So that's a really good metric of like how a car is going to perform compared to each other, compared to itself, etc. Now with 0 degrees of camber in the front, it still handled great, but you definitely could feel it plowing a little bit, you know, understeering a little bit. You could actually get the tires to you know, talk to you a little bit on the street relatively easily. I'm not a big fan of just flying around, driving super, super fast on the street. So, you know, I'm never gonna push a car to its max on the road, personally speaking, to each their own. But you actually could not really push the car that hard. You could hear the tires, you know, a little tiny bit on the road. And these are Ultra High Performance All Seasons. They are General G-Max AS07s. Also important to note, the AS05 I had on the car originally, but per Tire Rack's testing, the AS07s actually are really one of the better Ultra High Performance All Seasons. So we've got the fresh tires, the fresh, pretty good quality tires. We got the struts and alignment and everything else. So then, I did a whole weekend drive on curvy roads with that 0 degree alignment. Again, same results, drove really well, but you know, kind of a little bit lighter steering. You could hear the tires talking to you if you cornered hard, that sort of thing. So finally, I took it back to the alignment shop and they corrected the error they had made and put it at about, you know, 1.9 to 2 degrees of camber on the front tires, which is what I wanted. So now the front end's got a little bit of camber in it. The rear end still has its camber. Life's good. Took it on the same drive on the same road right after I got it aligned. You know, similar temperatures, obviously the same tires, same amount of tire wear, all those sort of things. Really, really cool A to B test. And let me tell you what, I could very legitimately feel the difference. Like, no placebo effect, nothing like that. The camber absolutely positively, even on the street, just absolutely helped the car eat through corners. I mean, the turn-in was better, the car felt more planted. I was actually surprised, to be honest, that I could feel it that much on the street. I don't have a lot of experience driving a whole variety of other cars. I just have a lot of experience driving this one car on the track, on the street, everything else. So it was kind of like in a, you know, pseudo, I was getting like a pseudo experience of another car, if you will, right? Because it was a different setup. So that was really neat. But more importantly, this car is set up over the worn out stock struts and worn out tires. I mean, truly groundbreaking. Like, when you drive a regular passenger car on worn out struts, if they're not that bad, it's like a little bit annoying, but you don't think much of it. But for a performance car, I just didn't realize how much it matters. Like, it doesn't matter a little bit, it matters a lot of it. And to go back to those forum posts saying that the 1LEs are suspension, sorry, the Bilsteins are better than the 1LE suspension stock, like stock new for new. It's hard for me to say because the 1LE suspension I hadn't been able to drive on, you know, in a good working order for many, many, many months at least, if not years, right? Or at least a year or two. So I don't really have a good, like, brand new 5th Gen 1LE versus my car on the Bilsteins. But I do truly believe that the Bilsteins are every bit as good. They're definitely not worse. I would hang my hat on that and say they're not worse. And I think they're probably 10 to 15% better than the 1LEs. And when I say better, I mean a little stiffer, a little bit better turn-in feel, a little bit better mid-corner bump handling, just all the things that make them more sporty. They actually probably ride worse, right? They're a more compromised ride from a comfort perspective. I would keep that in mind. And if you're coming from an SS, I think you're really going to notice that compromised comfort potentially as well. But that's what I would say. And it's, again, it's a little bit hard to say because I don't have a scenario where I can compare the two back to back on the same road on the same day or the same track on the same day, things mean, I said to myself for like the last 6 months or so, I was like, man, I think I want to get like a smaller, more sporty car. Maybe not a Miata, but something in between, like a Miata and this car. I don't even care if it's a little less powerful. I just want to really focus on handling. Like, that was my big thing. And I think I was saying that, I know I was saying that, because this car wasn't handling the way that I expected it to, or the way I wanted it to, as I refined my palate, if you will. Well, it turns out the only reason it wasn't handling the way I wanted it to is because I needed to friggin' maintain the thing and replace all these parts. So now that I did all that, I am like elated with this thing. I seriously, it feels like every time I'm like more excited to drive it. I literally hop in this car and I say to myself, like, wow, like I'm actually really excited to take this thing to work today. Whereas I was to a degree before, but not the way that I am now. And yeah, it was such a good investment. Now it's maintenance items, so you need to do them anyway, but it wasn't just maintenance. It turned into like almost also being like a modification or an upgrade, which is a pretty cool spot to be in. Kind of sucks sometimes when you have to replace tires on something, or you do have to do struts or like brakes, because it's just like, I don't know, it's the type of things you spend all this money on and then you get the exact same result as what it just should be stock. But if it's degraded enough, man, returning to stock or to a slightly better state than stock can be really, really satisfying, I've found. And relatively, in the scheme of things, inexpensive. This car so far, it's only cost me probably about $2,000 in repairs all in. Half of that or better being the struts I just did. And for a car with 105,000 miles, I mean, I'll take that any day of the week. Like, if struts are going to wear out on literally any car in that amount of time, so that's like a moot point to me. These struts are relatively inexpensive for how performance oriented they are, which is super cool. That's the cool thing about Camaros and Mustangs, and they're pretty affordable to maintain and repair and keep them in a top level of condition for sportiness, if you will, which is super nice. Anyway, what was the point of this whole video? The point of this video is for me to blab on and on and on about my car, but mostly to kind of tell you guys, if you're hesitating a little bit on buying a new car because your car's getting older and some things have worn out, listen, go buy a new car if you can afford it and you want to, that's fine. But I guess all I'm saying is you might be surprised how good of a return on your investment you get if you just maintain what you've got, and just spend a little bit of time and money getting it dialed back into what it would have been from the factory. And then I would actually caution you about actual modifications. And in some people's case, it's totally the way to go. Anytime something stock breaks, put an aftermarket higher performance component on it. But if you loved that car stock and your needs haven't changed and your opinions haven't drastically changed, just return the car to the state where you loved it. And that's all you need to do. You don't need to spend all this extra money on aftermarket parts. I didn't need coilovers. Would they have been cool? Yes. But I've got a lot of net worth tied up in other vehicles. I don't need to be spending $4,000 in this car on money I'll never get back. Putting struts on it when it comes time to sell this thing one day they were relatively cheap. To some degree, I'll get the money back out of them, at least in the sense that the car is just in its best form of being stock, and I won't scare somebody away by having coilovers, or the brand they don't want, or the ride height they don't want, or whatever it is, right? So, I don't know. I'm just a big fan, as I get older, of keeping things pretty stock. I think I would even say OEM plus. Like, that's my favorite way to do a vehicle, and it kind of always has been, but take whatever came from the factory, tweak maybe a couple of the weak points. If you've got something that's objectively 20% worse than the rest of the things around it, right? Maybe you've got like a car that has great suspension but a weak sway bar, or it's got this or it's got that. Sure, replace that stuff. But beyond that, just enjoy the thing, keep it stock, and I don't know, just my thoughts. So anyways, guys, as always, thanks for watching. God bless America, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.